So picture this. What happens when an entire city, its residents, its leaders, its community groups, all stand up together and say no to a project that the national government has already given the green light? Today, we're diving into a really fascinating legal battle where one city tried to use its local power to stop a national plan dead in its tracks. It really all boils down to this fundamental question. If the national government says something is legal, can your city turn around and declare it illegal within its own borders? This case puts that exact idea to the test. Let's see how it all went down. All right, so our story kicks off in 1992 in Cagayan de Oro City. The Philippine Amusement and Gaming Corporation, you probably know it as PAGCOR, they're the national group that runs all legal gambling. Well, they announced they were expanding. And their next target, a brand new casino, right in the heart of the city. They leased a building, started renovations, and were all set for a big opening. But, as you can probably guess, the city had some other ideas. The reaction was, let's just say it was swift and not friendly. And we're not just talking about protests and signs. Within weeks of the announcement, the city council passed a law to deny the casino a business permit. And then, less than a month after that, they doubled down with an even stronger ordinance that banned casino operations completely. The stage was set for a major legal showdown. Now this is the key part. Cagayan de Oro wasn't just morally against the casino, they genuinely believed they had the law on their side. They were gearing up to fight PAGCOR, not on the streets, but in the courtroom. And they thought they had some powerful new legal tools to do it. And I mean, look at the language in their ordinance. It doesn't get much clearer than that. This wasn't about regulating the casino or setting some new rules. This was an outright, you are not welcome here. A total prohibition.
So you might be wondering, how did they think they could pull this off? Well, the city's entire case was built on the brand new Local Government Code of 1991. They argue that this new code gave them broad powers under something called the General Welfare Clause, which basically lets them act to protect public morals. And they pointed to a specific part, Section 458, that says cities can prevent and suppress gambling. In their eyes, this new powerful code effectively changed the rules of the game, even overriding the older national law that created PAGCOR.
And that brings us right to the core of this whole thing. This fight wasn't really just about a casino anymore. It had become a classic constitutional puzzle. What happens when a local law and a national law are in a head-on collision? You had a total legal deadlock. On one side, you've got the local government code, which seems to give cities the power to shut down gambling, but on the other side, you have a national law, Presidential Decree 1869, which gives PAGCOR the power to regulate all games of chance, casinos included, anywhere in the country. Both of these things just couldn't be true at the same time. Of course, a battle this big was always going to end up in the Supreme Court. The justices had to step in and untangle this legal knot, and they were very clear about how they were going to approach it. The very first thing the court did was to take all the emotional, moral arguments and just sweep them off the table. They basically said, look, whether gambling is good or bad isn't for us to decide. That's a job for the lawmakers. The only question they were going to answer was a pure and simple legal one. Who has the power? To figure that out, they honed in on this key legal concept, ultra vires. It's a Latin term, and it just means beyond the powers. The idea is simple. If a government body does something it doesn't have the legal authority to do, then that action is just void. It has no effect. So the court had to decide, had the city gone beyond its powers? And here it is, the moment where the entire case turns. The court zeroed in on the exact wording of the local government code. Remember how it says cities can suppress gambling and other prohibited games of chance? Well, the court decided that phrase meant that cities can only go after illegal gambling. They couldn't use it to ban something like a PAGCOR casino that was explicitly made legal by a national law. That one interpretation led to this really clear chain of logic. First, a basic rule. A local law can't contradict a national law. Second, the decree that created PAGCOR, that's a national law. Third, the new local government code never actually said it was getting rid of the PAGCOR decree. So, the conclusion was kind of unavoidable. The city's ordinances were invalid because they went against national law. And so, the Supreme Court delivered its final verdict. They actually acknowledged the city's good intentions, calling their motives praiseworthy. But when it came to the law, the city's ordinances were ultra-virus, beyond their power, and because of that, they were void. But the story doesn't quite end there. In a separate opinion, one of the justices, Hilario Padilla, added this really powerful thought.
Even though he agreed with the legal decision, he made a point to say that we should all remember that what is legal is not always moral. It was his way of acknowledging the city's deep concerns and reminding everyone that just because something is allowed by law, that doesn't automatically make it the right thing to do.
So why does a case from decades ago still matter so much today? Because what it did was reaffirm a fundamental principle about how government is structured, a principle that impacts every single city and town.
This case really solidified the idea of a hierarchy of law. Think of it like a pyramid. At the very top, you have the national laws. Way down at the bottom are the local city ordinances. A rule from the bottom of the pyramid simply cannot erase a rule from the top. In this system, local governments are basically seen as agents of the national government. They get their power from the national government, so they can't turn around and challenge it.
The ruling really boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. The national government is the principle that delegates or gives power to local governments. And the one who receives the power, the delegate, can never be more powerful than the one who gave it to them in the first place. And all of this leaves us with a pretty big question still hanging in the air. This case was a clear legal win for national authority, but it highlights this ongoing tension in any democracy. When the will of a local community goes head-to-head with a national law, who should really get to decide? The court gave us a legal answer, for sure, but that's a question that communities everywhere are still wrestling with.